Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Ronnie Nolan. I serve as the Executive Director of the Kentucky Educational Collaborative for State Agency Children. And we're very excited that you have joined us this morning as we talk a little bit about the requirements of our KECSAC contract, the Memorandum of Agreement, and just kind of give an overview a little bit of what to expect in our partnership over the course of this year. I will ask that if you're not muted, if you could please mute your mic during the session, but feel free to ask questions. You can unmute yourself if you have questions, or you can pop some questions into the chat as well. Also, notice that in the chat we have dropped in the presentation this morning, so you'll have that for your records. Feel free to go into that and save that so you have that for future reference if you need it. Um, but we are excited that you're here. I do want to take, before we get started too early, just introduce a couple of people in here. We have Angela Austin, who has joined us on here, and she is our program improvement specialist for the western region of the state. And she's on there. She'll wave to you guys. Peggy Shearer is also with us as well. Peggy is our program improvement specialist the for our eastern part of the state, and so we're excited to have both of them with us as well. So thank you all for being here. Katie Helton is also on here with us this morning. She is does all of our professional development for us and works with us throughout the year. So if you have questions over the course of the year about PD or other things, Katie will be happy to help us out with that as well. So just to respect everybody's time as we go through here, I am going to just share my screen as we do a presentation. And then again, feel free to drop questions into the chat. Katie's going to monitor those questions and then make sure that I see those and that we get a response back to you through that. Um, but I am very excited that you're joining KECSAC. KECSAC we're a legislatively created agency. We were created way back in 1992 as a response to the Kentucky Education Reform Act, which some of you might remember and some of you might not, but I remember it back in the day. And so, what they failed to do during that time, though, was really to address the needs of students who were in non-traditional educational settings, particularly kids who were being served in residential programs or who were in the Department of Juvenile Justice, which, by the way, did not exist at that time. Um, so they really did not talk about them, and they came back in 1992 and created our agency to work with the Department of Education, the Department of Juvenile Justice, the Department for Community-Based Services, and the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities to really look at the holistic needs of children and youth who are in the care or custody of the Commonwealth. So we have a lot of students that we serve over the course of the year. And although many of you are new, not all of you, many of you are new this year, coming into a leadership role in your program for the first time. You've probably already been moving in these programs for at least a couple of months now that we're at the end of August. And so you know that we have a lot of students who are in our programs, excuse me, and a lot of students who move in and out frequently within our system, both between our different types of programs, but also uh, within in and out of our system into what we call traditional alternative education programs or traditional educational settings and back and forth. So we have a lot of students that we work with each year. And we'll give you more details about that on Thursday during our new educators training, which is happening at the Marriott Griffin Gate in Lexington on this Thursday. And so we'll get an opportunity to meet you in person there, but also to talk a little more detail about our agency and our partnership and how we work together. What we wanted to do today was to really share. Um, about the contracting process and ask and answer any questions that you might have related to that. So I'm going to share my screen and then move through. Plus, that'll be easier on your all's eyes too, instead of having to look at me this whole time. So I'll share that as well, so you guys can see it as we follow along. And again, it's also in your chat in case you have that as well. So we'll do that, and then we'll go from there. All right, so as I said, my name is Ronnie Nolan. I'm the executive director of KECSAC. Sherry Kluske is our associate director. Um, she isn't with us in this meeting this morning, but you'll have an opportunity to meet her on Thursday as well. What we're going to do today is talk about what are the definition of state agency children so that you know um, who we work with in particular within your programs, because some of your programs serve only state agency children, and some of your programs are what we call blended programs, where you have both state agency children and district referred children or district placed children in the same program. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll go through what the district will provide as far as services for students, how funding from our agency supports those services, and then what we require in exchange for those services, and touch just briefly on the different attachments that are part of the Memorandum of Agreement. And then finish up with the timelines for those. So again, if you have questions during any of that, please don't hesitate to just reach out either in that chat or just, unmute yourself and jump in. I don't mind that at all. I think, that'll help the whole process. So we serve within our programs and within your programs, we serve state agency children. And those state agency children, that's a legislatively defined group of students. And what I think is interesting is sometimes when we think about state agency children, we sometimes think that that means every child who is in the foster care system, for example, or every kid that has juvenile justice involvement. And it really doesn't. It's much more specific than that when we talk about state agency children. Those certainly are state involved youth, and those are kids who are connected to the state. But as far as state agency children, we have a very specific definition of those. And so I've shared that with you on your screen here so you can see that. But it is kids who are of school age. And so school age is defined in statute in Kentucky from ages 5 through 21. So that includes, kindergarten through age 21. Those kids can be served. That's school age. It includes those kids who are placed or in the custody of the cabinet or placed or financed by the cabinet into a facility or a program that has a contract with the cabinet. Those who are in community-based services, those who are in the custody or care of the Department of Juvenile Justice, and placed in a program that's either operated or contracted by DJJ. And then just recently, we have been able to add an additional pathway for state agency children to move into our programs, and that primarily impacts our day treatment programs that are affiliated with the Kentucky Department of Juvenile Justice. So you'll see our fourth area there. Those are those kids who are referred by the FAIR team, the Family Accountability Intervention and Response team. All of our school districts across the state have a FAIR team and are involved with a FAIR team in some way. And so you can see those as well of how kids are referred into that system. So these are the only kids that are within our system that we have a partnership and our contract has oversight related to. So, as I said before, some of you have what we call a blended program. Those are primarily those day treatment programs where you have kids who meet this legal definition who are in those facilities and in those programs who are sitting in the same classrooms with kids who are referred there by the school district, but who might also need the same kinds of supplemental educational supports that students who are in state care need. So, but those that are counted within our KECSAC guidelines are those who meet this very specific definition. Do we have any questions about any of those particular definitions or how children within your facilities may meet the requirements of KECSAC? Feel free to drop those in the chat and Katie's monitoring that as well. So today we're going to particularly talk about the Memorandum of Agreement. Mostly because we used to do this session during our new educators training, and so it happened on that one day that we're all together. But really, we really felt like it was a lot of information, and it was very specific to the administrators, not necessarily to all of the folks who may be new to a KECSAC program. So we would have teachers, teaching aides, counselors, and other folks who were in that training who often said, well, this is great information, but this doesn't really apply to me. So that's why we're doing, typically, we do this separate session with all of you just a couple of days early so that one, you can look at this information. If you don't have this completed yet, or if you have questions about it, you certainly can ask that today. But it also gives you a chance to reflect on it a couple of days before we come together on Thursday so that if during that time you have questions, we'll meet in person then, and then you can ask additional questions that you might have. So the memorandum of agreement is essentially the agreement or the contract between our local partnering school districts and KECSAC. Um, we are not in every school district across the state. I think we're in 49 different school districts. I think we have 69 different programs that operate in Kentucky. So not every district has a KECSAC program, but certainly those that do, this is the contract between those local school districts and KECSAC that outlines specifically what services the school district will provide and what supports KECSAC will provide, and then touches on our state agency partners as well, which includes that Department of Juvenile Justice, DCBS, and Behavioral Health. In addition to, or in kind of response to the requirements or kind of the things that the local school district provides, KECSAC agrees to provide funding to that local school district to help supplement the cost of those services. And I want to stress in here, and we'll talk about this a little later as well, but it is supplemental funding. The General Assembly never intended the KECSAC funding to cover the full cost of providing educational services to students who are in these programs. These students still generate SEEK funding for the local school district. They still generate IDEA funding, and at a substantial amount, as I'm sure you've already figured out, that many of our students have an identified educational disability, which comes with supplemental funding as well from the federal government to support those students' needs. So, in addition to the SEEK, the IDEA funding, there's title funding that is often associated with these programs, and then our supplemental funding that comes to the district as well. So all of those different sources together should be enough to help support the educational services that are taking place within these programs. Our district commitments are actually pretty simple. We think that is that the local school district agrees to develop a school calendar that reflects a total of 230 days. In the contract that we send you, the MOA, it has actually a calendar app that's in it so that you can go ahead and very easily fill in that calendar on that app and show us the 230 days. Of those 230 days, 210 of those days are direct instruction days of state agency children in your program. There is a little bit of flexibility within that 210 days, and that is a result of the General Assembly changing the total number of days that are required within a traditional school calendar. So those of us who have been around for a long time, as I said, way back when CARA started, way back in 1991, I think CARA went into effect. When that happened, the General Assembly, since that time, the General Assembly has reduced the number of separate days that are required in a traditional calendar. And so now they have 1,062 hours that have to be reflected in a traditional calendar. And we've really moved away from uh, the number of days, the number of individual days within that system. So it used to be 177 days that every district did 177 days. And then they changed that to 1,062 days. And some districts do that within 170 days, and some people do it in 172, and some people do 175, and others do 177. And so we've allocated room within those 210 instructional days that if the traditional calendar is the 1,062 hours of direct instruction is met in fewer days than the 177, we require 33 additional separate days, which is what the original number of days were beyond the traditional school calendar. So if you have 170 days in your traditional calendar, you can meet that 210 instructional days by having 203 days of direct instruction. So there's a little bit of flexibility within that. And so I'd be happy to talk with any of you offline should you have questions about that as well. We also require within our MOA some very specific classroom ratios. So the state statute requires that we have no more than 10 students per teacher in the program, or no more than 15 students if there is a teacher with a classroom aide in the same classroom. So you can have more than 10 students if you have a classroom aide also assigned to your classroom who is providing instructional support within that educational setting. Now, we know that there are some days where you may have 8 students in a classroom and some days where you have 12 students in a classroom. And so we really, as we come and do site visits and Peggy and Angie and others who visit, we really do look at the average of that. So we know that some days you may run a little bit over that. Um, if it becomes an issue where we see that you are running your average is more than that, then we will come back in and request that the teacher's aide be added to that classroom. So we do look at averages. We have a little bit of flexibility in that. We don't look at hard and fast numbers every single day. And so if one day you go over to 11 kids, we're not going to come in and say you have to have an aide for that day. But if it's consistently running above that, then we will come back in and not just look at those averages, but then say, you have to provide the requirement that is agreed to under the Memorandum of Agreement and that is outlined in state statute. So those are the general kind of supplemental services that are required within those programs. In addition to that, obviously, it should go without saying, but just in case it doesn't, our students in our program should be getting an equitable educational experience to students who are in your traditional settings. The state statute says that they should get that as much as is possible. And we really focus on that. Equitable does not mean equal. Equitable means that we are providing the educational services that our students need, and that we're doing that at the district level to ensure that those things are being met for our kids. So, in addition to those extended school calendar, in addition to the smaller classroom sizes, we're also asking and requiring that those students receive an equitable education, that they are getting their core content courses, that they are getting, that they are on track to graduate, that we are moving them toward a diploma, that we are supporting their educational needs as part of that process. So we want to make sure that those things are happening as well within our programs. And Peggy and Angie certainly will see those as well.
Ronnie, we've got a quick question over in chat.
Trying to go over there. Does the counselor and principal count as an aide? A counselor and a principal, they do not count as an aide unless they are providing direct instructional support within the classroom. So that is certainly an issue. A counselor and a principal, we have to have, if you have more than the 10, there has to be an aide who is providing educational supports in the classroom. So just if we looked at your total numbers, if we're coming in and you're just putting on paper that, look, we have four staff who are in the building, and you're counting your counselor and principal as one of those to meet the staffing requirements, that would not meet the requirement of having a classroom teacher and an aide in the classroom. So again, it's all about that educational support in the classroom. You're also required, obviously, and we'll talk about this, to have an administrator identified for the program. You have to provide if you're a day treatment program, there are requirements about counseling that you have to provide for that program. So those folks have very specific duties as well. So when we look at just the classroom ratios, we don't look at just the number of adults who are in the building. We look at what is being provided as supports to the students in the classroom. And so we look at all of those things, and then we provide supplemental funding to the district for that through our state agency Children's Fund. Those funds are provided by the General Assembly each budget year, which happens every other year. We, along with you and with our other administrators and with our district leadership across the Commonwealth, advocate for funding to support the needs of these students. And so we really work with them to make sure that we have an appropriate allocation to support the educational services that are required in state statute and that we expect from our programs across Kentucky. And so these supplemental funds are provided directly to the district to help defray the cost of the extended school calendar and the small classroom sizes. As I said earlier, certainly they are not expected to cover the entire cost of operating the program. There are many other sources of funding that flow into a district that these students generate. And so we look at all of that funding as a whole when we talk about what is expected to provide and support the educational services. The memorandum of agreement that we issue, that is an annual kind of contract, and it does have to be renewed each year. We issue those, and we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but we issue those typically in May, and those are generally due back around September 15th for our programs. The funding process, again, the General Assembly provides supplemental funding that's identified as a line item for us in the state budget. For this current year that we are in, that is $12.5 million that is provided by the General Assembly. Those funds flow to the Kentucky Department of Education, and then they move through that system to us. Our internal operating budget is about $950,000. And then we do about $11.5 million that is allocated directly out to local school districts for supplemental support to all of our districts to make sure that they have the resources they need to provide those services. All of our districts receive those supplemental services based on the average daily membership of the program, regardless of the type of program that it is. So if you're a day treatment program, or if you're a residential juvenile justice program, or a group home setting, all of those districts receive the same per child amount that is, but it's based on the number of kids that you have in your membership, your daily membership reports. So we operate a little bit differently than traditional schools or seek funding. Those are based on your average daily attendance. Ours is not based on your average daily attendance. It's based on the membership, so the enrollment of the program. And so we do that a little bit differently. And that's because we have a lot of, as you all know, a lot of moving parts that are happening with state agency children. So we have court dates, we have therapy that's happening, we have a lot of supplemental wraparound services that are happening. And so we look at enrollment within those programs and not just the admissions or the attendance criteria. Our funds are allocated again based on that average daily membership, which is generated from Infinite Campus. Um, and so make sure all of you are working with your data person to make sure that you are accurately and appropriately identifying students in your program as state agency children within the KECSAC tab that's located inside Infinite Campus. All of your funding is based on that. So we generate those reports internally here in our office on three separate points in time over the course of a year. That's October 15th, December 1st, and March 13th. We look at all of those. We pull that data out of Infinite Campus. We then send that data to you. We don't send individual student names by email. We don't share in non-secured ways student identifying student information. We simply will send you a summary of the report that says, according to our data we've collected on October 15th, your Infinite Campus report is showing us that you have 10 students enrolled in your program. We ask that you verify that and then share that back with us. And so, over the course of those three different moments in time, we take that, we do a very simple math work on that. We look at the total number of students in our ADM, we look at the total number of money that is of funds that are provided by the General Assembly, and we simply divide that. This year's per child rate is $7,004 per child, which is a substantial amount of funding, far and above and beyond what is provided in SEEK, typically what is provided in IDEA. So, I mean, when we look at the total allocation of funding on a per child basis, it's pretty substantial. And I think that speaks to the support that the Kentucky General Assembly has provided to the educational services of children and youth who are in state care. And it's a significant increase over where we have been in previous years. I've been at KECSAC for a long time now. I started in 2004. And back in 2004, when we looked at it, we had about $2,000 per child that was provided to districts to provide these supplemental services, which include those 33 additional days and those smaller classroom sizes. As you can imagine, that did not go very far back then. And so we're really excited that we're able to provide through that partnership with the General Assembly a little bit over $7,000 per student. So when we look at that $7,000 coupled with the roughly, depending on your district, um, and there's variation within SEEK, as you all know. But if you look at the base SEEK, which is about $4,200 or somewhere around in that, um, when you compare those two or you bring those two funding sources together alongside the IDEA funding that's generated by our students, it certainly appears to be that there should be funding to provide the services that are required through this contract for our students. We do all of our funding, by the way, on a reimbursement scale. You all may be new to your districts, but I think that all of our districts that are currently with us are established programs. And so your finance folks in your district are certainly well aware of the requirements for KECSAC funding and how we support that. So funds are reimbursed quarterly back to your district. Um, After these quarterly reports are due back to us. So our first quarter is October 25th. Then we have January 25th, April 25th, and July 15th is our end of the year report. All of those funds then are reimbursed back to your district based on what you're spending as we move through that year. Just to note that all of those are required to be provided in Munis format. And so we require a Munis report from each district showing what funds have been spent. Obviously, we have funds can be used for direct labor and direct employment support, supplies, subcontracts, and incidental expenses, all of those. But there's a full funding matrix, which is available on our website, and there's a link there that you can click onto that as a reminder, this presentation is in your chat. So if you open that, you can just click on that link. It'll take you directly to a Munis approved funding matrix on our website that shows you all of the different Munis codes that are approved to be spent during that time. And again, Katie just shared that again in the chat just in case you missed it earlier so that you can go to that link if you would like as well. So when we look at all of that, our associate director of finance at KECSAC submits those quarterly reimbursement requests to KDE. So you send us those Munis reports. We review all of those to make sure that they are within the approved Munis expenditures. If they're not, we'll send them back to you and ask for corrections or ask for you to move those funds to an approved expenditure code for us. We then send those to KDE, and then KDE will send reimbursement funds directly back to the school district. So you won't ever or your finance person doesn't ever get a transfer from KECSAC. All of those reimbursements come directly from KDE back. We put this in here also just so that you all know that once it leaves our office and it goes to KDE, it really is on their timeline for how they reimburse that. They generally do that fairly quickly, but if you are seeing that they're not, please let us know and we can make sure that we follow up with them to make sure that they are doing that in a timely manner. So again, there are some KECSAC requirements as we talked about, and I want to just go over those just briefly with us as we go through this, just so that we're all on the same page. All the teachers in a KECSAC funding program must meet Kentucky certification requirements, just like other teachers in any other program. And so we have some flexibility, as you all know, within that, but if they meet the requirements for certification in Kentucky, they certainly can be teachers within our programs. We also, as we said, all of our new educators are required by statute to attend the new educators training, which is this Thursday in Lexington at the Marriott Griffin Gate. We also require that all of our school districts that we partner with identify a designated school administrator to be the instructional leader of the program. Our statute also, though, has some flexibility on what school administrator means, and it's defined differently than it may be for a traditional school environment. This can include a lead teacher, a principal, or a district office personnel who has been identified as the school administrator. And we have all of those different types of administrators when we look at our programs across Kentucky. So we have a lot of flexibility within that system as well. The designated school administrator is also required in statute to attend two statewide meetings of the State Agency Children's School Administrators Association, which we call SACSA. You're automatically, as an administrator, a member of this organization and this association. We have elections of this group where they identify a president and a president-elect. The president-elect serves a 2-year term and then moves into a 2-year term as president. So it's a 4-year time frame that your elected representation serves as part of our governing board. And so that association meets this year on two separate dates. The fall meeting is September 5th, which I think is 2 Fridays from now, or Friday after this one, I guess. And then our spring meeting is March 6th. The spring meeting will be a virtual meeting. We typically do that by Zoom or by Teams, one of those in the spring. And so you'll attend that from your office or the comfort of your home or your beach house or wherever you are on March 6th. You can join that virtually, but the fall meeting on September 5th is an in-person meeting. That meeting is at the Kentucky Historical Society in Frankfort downtown on Broadway. And so that'll be a half-day training in person that all of our identified school administrators must attend as outlined in both our contract and in statute. In addition, when you look at our contract and you go through that, there are several things that are in statute that talk about kind of the role of the administrator and things that you're supposed to do. Part of that is that the school administrator or their designee should participate in their treatment planning conferences and team meetings with your treatment partner, if that is an external agency or if it is your counseling staff that is hired internally. There should be a collaborative holistic approach to meeting the needs of our students. So much so, and the General Assembly really thought it was so important that they enshrined that into legislation. And it says, you shall do this. You know, you should participate in those treatment planning meetings to make sure that you're aware of what is happening on the treatment side with these students, but also that the treatment side knows what's going on educationally as well. In addition, we already talked about the teacher-pupil ratios and the requirements that are outlined within those statutes as well. We also ask that all of our districts develop a professional development plan for all certified staff who are on site at our state agency programs. That includes, the teachers and administrators as part of that PD plan. They will attend the new educators. And then we recommend that there's 3 days of extended calendar being used for trainings that are specific to at-risk or state agency children. Again, that's a recommendation. It's not a requirement, but the needs of our students are very different than what we find in a traditional classroom. Certainly, our students and the types of needs of our students are in every classroom, in every building, in every school in Kentucky. But in our particular programs, we have a high concentration of those students who have very elevated needs. And so we want to make sure that all of our folks are getting the training that they need to meet those particular needs of this very particular population as well. So we also ask, as I said earlier, that you provide a 33 extended school day. We do have some flexibility with those school days about the amount of instruction. So your traditional calendar in Kentucky says that you should have no less than 6 hours of direct instruction. But when we move to our extended days, we have a minimum of 4 hours of direct instruction. Almost all of our programs across Kentucky provide a full 6 hours of direct instruction during those days, but we do allow for 4 hours. We also ask that all of our students have an individual plan of instruction. The ILPA, which is included in the student information section of Infinite Campus, is the approved format for that. But just to update that if a student has an IEP, they do not have to have a separate IPI. So the ILPA is not required for students who have an IEP. And as we talked earlier, at this point, when we look at our data, about 43% of our students in our programs have an IEP. So you have a large, almost half of our students who will meet this requirement through their IEP, which is required to be monitored and updated just as though they were in a traditional learning environment. So they meet that requirement as well. In addition, in the contract, you'll note that it says that all youth in our programs must have a formal or informal academic assessment within the first 30 days of placement. That is required in our state statutes as well, so it outlines that. Formal or informal are key phrases that are included in this particular section. Excuse me. And so those formal assessments, many of you use, and those are kind of standardized across your district. Those may include star reading and math. It may include TABE testing, Woodcock-Johnson, or many others that you use. Informal academic assessments are those teacher developed and district developed assessments that may be used as well, as long as you document those and what you're using. That would be fine. It also requires that all of the students in our programs, just like a child anywhere else, get the same state assessments as any other student who is in a public school in Kentucky. So there's no variation for that. We all do the same assessments that everybody else does, in addition to these formal and informal assessments that have to take place at the beginning of their enrollment. We also look at school records. It notes that that you must request educational records from the previous enrollment. You must also forward educational records to the next school within 5 days of transferring. All of that, as you all know, is done within Infinite Campus. Certainly, we can do that in a much easier way and streamlined fashion than we used to be able to do because of the access to Infinite Campus. But Infinite Campus, I'll just share, and you all know this, Infinite Campus is only as good as the information that is entered. And so we must make sure that we are putting all of the appropriate information into Infinite Campus. And I often share that as a new administrator, when you're getting new students who are enrolling, that when you look at their records that are coming in, when you're sending it out, you should be making sure that you're sending out everything that you wish you got when a student came into your program. If you're thinking, okay, a kid has been with me for 4 weeks and I haven't issued a credit to that student, I certainly would want to include in their educational records that I'm sharing with the next school what they completed while they were with you so that we can continue on that path toward earning a credit so that we can keep our kids on track to graduate from high school. We will talk about this on Thursday as well, but we have a significant gap with our graduation rates for state agency children compared to traditional kids and students who are in traditional services. And a lot of that is because our students move so frequently. And if we're not including the information in Infinite Campus about where they are and what they've earned while they're with us, then they're not really being able to earn those credits and to move toward graduation. And that's a disservice to our kids. And it is a hindering to them, not just in their secondary education and their pursuit of a diploma, but also in their lifetime pursuits. When we are not helping them move toward that diploma, we are taking responsibility for those students not being able to graduate. And then that has obviously lifelong implications for those students as well. We also have within our statute that it says that an educational passport has to be prepared for each student. That language was put in prior to Infinite Campus being created or the student information system, which it used to be. And so we have updated by policy that the educational passport can be met by providing the required services and required information in Infinite Campus for us. We do have some MOA attachments, and I just want to talk about those briefly as we go through this. The first attachment within the contract that we have is a budget for 25-26. The district must submit the total educational budget for the program in the project budget report MUNIS format. That includes both your state agency children's fund as well as your SEEK funds that are allocated to the program, IDEA funding, Title I funding. Any funding that's coming into that program should be reflected in your budget, and then that budget should be shared with us as part of this contract. Most of you are probably already have on your board agenda, if you haven't already, to have these contracts approved. And so you want to make sure that your board also, your local board of education also knows what funding is being used for these programs as well. And so we ask that you include all of that. In addition, we ask for a comprehensive budget that has all of that, again, all of that, including all sources of funding for the program. You'll see that attachment in your MOA as well. Attachment 3 is pretty simple. So you'll have your school calendar. Again, it has to show 230 days with a minimum of 210 of those of instruction. Your extended days have to be designated as an extended day so that you can have that. And then we also ask that you also upload your extended calendar into Infinite Campus. So it's part of the official record within Infinite Campus as well, and not just a separate. I know that that creates some problems for some of our school districts, but if you need help in working through that with your district, we'd be happy to help do that as well. We also require a makeup day plan. So that's a plan for making up any of the instructional days that are lost because of inclement weather or any other district planned events. So you all know that throughout the course of the year, we have many, it feels like, weather-related issues that come up. And so we want to make sure that we are meeting those requirements as well. We also have here a seat calculation worksheet. We put that worksheet in there. It's a fairly simple worksheet for you guys to do, but it does break out your base seek, any at-risk add-ons, your educational disability add-ons, and it shows you, as much as it shows us the funds that are coming into the district, it also shows you what funds are coming into the district. Sometimes that information is safeguarded at a district level, and so we want to make sure that that is shared out with our programs, and so you're well aware of the funding that is being generated by students in these programs within the district, so that we can make sure that the educational needs of this particular population are being met as well. So we require that as part of the contract. In addition, there is an interagency agreement between the district and the program. This is often for DJJ programs. You'll have your interagency agreement, which looks like a contract between DJJ and the district. That can be included here. Between our private child care agencies, which include hospital settings, group homes, residential group homes, alcohol drug treatment centers, those kinds of places, you'll have an interagency agreement that will be negotiated annually that outlines the responsibilities of the treatment partner and what they will provide for the district, as well as what the district will provide for them. And it really is the legally binding agreement between the two agencies that outlines who has responsibility for what. And so make sure that you're reviewing that, and then it also including that as part of this attachment as well. In addition, we are required to have a program improvement plan. We have samples of that on our website that you can look at. We also included links to those that were embedded within the MOA when it was sent out to you. So you'd be able to just simply click on that link within that MOA, and it would take you to that website so that you could see some samples of that. Many of you are new administrators to this, and so you will have a development process where you're developing your program improvement plan along with your team and your colleagues in your program to make sure that you are developing smart goals, appropriate goals for educational outcomes for your students. One of the I think challenges for new administrators coming in is really looking at the implementation and impact check, which is attachment 8. Sometimes we get feedback from folks who are new who say things like, well, I don't have the data to tell me if we met our particular goal that we set for last year. Many of you do. You'll have access to that. You'll have access to the administrators and the support staff who were in your programs last year. So while you may be a new administrator, you may still have some of those folks who were there previously, and they can help you through that. If for some reason you're hitting a roadblock with being able to update your implementation and impact check based on last year's program improvement plan, please let us know, and we'll be happy to help you work through that as well. I've also had questions of people who said, I don't have a copy of my program improvement plan. The person who was here before left. I can't find this on any of my drives. We have all of those. So if that is an issue for you, you can simply just reach out to us by email or phone, and we'll be happy to send you last year's program improvement plan. We can send you the implementation and impact check from previous years. We have all of that data collected here, and we'd be happy to share that back with you as well. So if you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be happy to share that back with you. Attachment 9 is a student transition plan. That should outline the program's procedures for transitioning state agency children from one educational setting to the next. It must comply with the transition plan and service requirements of the IDEA, but it should also include procedures that address the transfer of educational records as well. And this is a requirement that is the only requirement within our contract that is outside of legislation. This was actually required of us through the Kentucky Board of Education that requested or that required us to collect a student transition plan for this. The plan, if you're a DJJ program, they also require transition planning. You certainly can use the same transition planning that you provide to the Department of Juvenile Justice here. We're not asking you to do double work for that. We just want to make sure that we are thoughtful about our transition planning.
Ronnie, quick question over in chat.
I see that. So with regard to the school improvement goal, can we keep a goal from a prior year if we want to continue working toward that goal? I think absolutely yes, you can keep that as long as your implementation and impact check, when you look at that attachment 8, that you're reporting back your progress on that goal and what you've been able to do in meeting that goal. And then if you want to continue with the same type of goal, you certainly can do that. Um, we just want to make sure that you're not just repeating the same goals because it's already an approved goal. It really must be something that you want to work toward. And then you also have to document the progress that you're making toward that. So as long as you're doing that and that continues to be a goal for you, I don't see why you can't continue to use that goal moving forward. Particularly if you think about some of our goals are we want to, an example, we want to increase our reading scores on our 90-day assessment, post-assessment by 3 percentage points over the course of this year. And then you're making progress toward that. But we know that your student population changes frequently. And so the same students may not be there in the second year as they were before. They may not be there in the next month as they were before. But if you're continually seeing that you have literacy as a recurring need for your students, certainly I think that you can have goals that continue around the same idea of literacy for your population. So yeah, I don't think that would be a problem at all.
Ronnie, can I interject here for just a
Yeah,
second? Um, and what Peggy and I see a lot of times is people continue on with the reading and math goals. And I think one thing that it's important to note is to look at your strategies. And, if you aren't seeing the growth that you would like to see, maybe the goal to keep the goal is fine, but to maybe look at different strategies or techniques or programs that are going to help you achieve that goal.
perfect. And that was Angela Austin. Those who couldn't see her know who was talking there on that. She's, again, our program improvement specialist for the western part of the state. So we do have some timelines as well that I just want to share with you briefly as we move through this. Over the course of the year, you may have some new programs that are identified in your district, or you may have some changes to that. So if you have a new program that's coming on board, KECSAC has to be notified that by April 1st of each year. You can request a state agency children's fund application. The superintendent needs to do that in your district. The reason that that is because we have our allocation from the General Assembly at that point, and then we start issuing out funding for our programs at the beginning of May. And so have to know if there's new programs that are coming in by that April 1st deadline. In addition, if there are changes in your rated capacity or in your program, then we request that by April 1st of each year as well. We generally mail out the memorandum of agreement to the superintendent during May of each year. Usually that is right around the beginning of May. Almost always we get that out, and then it's due back to KECSAC by September 15th of that same year. So we have all of that. That's generally the contract and the overview of the memorandum of agreement. I've included in here all of our statutes and regulations, as well as a link to our KECSAC website so that you can find all of those documents that we've referenced, including this MOA is on that website, as well as all of the other information that we talked about included in this contract. Just as so that you all know, and because this has been an issue in the past, the memorandum of agreement is not complete until all of the attachments are submitted and signatures are obtained by all parties. So until we have all of those components back, we don't do any reimbursement to the district until we have a completed memorandum of agreement. So just keep that in mind as our September 15th deadline. That is to give our legal office time to review that, to make sure that we have all of our attachments are completed. If there's any questions, we have time for correction to that prior to that October 25th reimbursement date that we want to make sure that districts are getting reimbursed. So that's kind of where we are. Just a reminder that, again, those aren't completed until we have everything. And so if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this point that we didn't cover through this as well. I know that's a lot of information to take in and it's a lot of just me talking, and that is never fun for anybody. It's certainly not fun for me, but it is part of, we just want to make sure that you have all of the information you need as you're completing these contracts. And if there's anything else that comes up, we'd be happy to work with you to address any of those questions as you move through this. So you have our information as well, Katie, in our in that chat. Will you put in there our contact information as well? If you'll drop that into that chat, just in case you don't have that, and that can be as simple as our website, just that has all of our links to our emails for all of our central office staff in case you have any questions about anything as you're working your way through this. The other thing I would just say is that you still have time between now and Thursday. So if we talked about something today that has piqued your interest or has caused confusion or opened up more questions for you, if you want to sit on those and think about that until you see us on Thursday, certainly you can do that. We will be there as well for the new educators training in person and available to answer any questions that you might have. I know, again, it's a lot of information, but I'm really excited that you all have chosen to spend part of your educational career, your professional career, working with state agency children. It's you're going if you don't love it already, you're going to love it. And I'll just share that, in a traditional classroom setting, um, sometimes, and we hear back from teachers all the time who say they don't see immediate results. And sometimes it is years before you see kind of the fruits of your labor. Um, but I'll just share with you that in these programs and working with this particular student population, we get those victories much more often because we have a lot of kids who are once we are able to provide them with um, their basic needs being met of safety, and we have a secure place. They're being fed regularly. They have support. All of those things come together. We really are creating a situation, I think, and I think the data shows us that we're creating situations where students can thrive, sometimes for the very first time. And so we get some pretty immediate feedback from that. And I think that's a rewarding place to be for our folks. So I thank you for joining us and for being part of this network. And I thank you for all of the hard work that you have already done and will continue to do for our kids because it is a challenging but rewarding place to be. So thank you all for being here. And if we can answer any questions, please feel free to reach out. Never hesitate. And we look forward to partnering. Thanks, everybody.